Hey guys, back with a supplementary video to go a bit deeper into pulling. We covered it at the end of Learn Dota episode 2, and this should cover most of the other bits that we didn't have time for. As we covered in that video, pulling is done for multiple reasons. It's a way to gather additional experience and gold for the hero pulling, it's done to deny some or all of the gold and experience from the incoming creep wave from the enemy team, and it also resets creep equilibrium. But pulling doesn't always go perfectly for a variety of reasons, so let's cover the common problems that happen. We mentioned in episode 2, creeps have an aggro range, meaning a range where if they encounter enemies, they'll run towards them and try to attack. When pulling, you're trying to walk neutral creeps into the aggro range of your incoming creep wave. If you time this incorrectly by pulling too early or too late, you could miss the pull and have to wait another 30 seconds, but there are some things you can do to try to save the pull. The best way to guarantee a pull is to aggro an attack because it gives you more flexibility in aggro. Lane creeps don't just have an AoE of aggro, they are also aggroed by someone attacking their friends, which is the mechanic you want to abuse here. You can abuse this by getting one of the neutral creeps to throw a ranged attack at your hero. While the projectile is in the air, you can walk that projectile wherever you want, and once that projectile connects with you, it creates an aggro AoE. If you're standing near your creeps when this aggro connects, lane creeps nearby will aggro and your pull will be saved. In this way, it's a good principle to always try to drag aggro from the pulled neutrals because you can better start your pull. Even if you pull a little early or late, you can grab at least some of your creep wave by dragging the attack in this way. Just remember that the leash range of the neutrals has a limit, so try to learn the limit of that range. It's often around this area, and once they throw the attack, you can drag the projectile towards your creeps to draw the aggro. As long as the projectile hits you, it'll draw aggro. Once aggroed, keep in mind that not all waves deal the same damage or have the same health. The kobold camps are very fast and thus can be easily pulled into the wave, but it's very important that the aggroed kobolds don't perish before your wave reaches their home, because if only one kobold causes aggro, its death will mean your creep wave might not see further enemies and they'll return to lane. The Vol assassin camp deals heavy damage to your creeps, but it's very slow and hard to pull into the lane and it dies relatively fast. So when pulling the Vol camp, you'll almost always have to drag aggro with the ranged attack and be ready to pull through because of its low health. With things like this in mind, almost every pull will be slightly different than one another. You just have to learn to adjust on the fly with each pull. Once your pull is completed and the creeps begin fighting, you can usually last hit the first dying neutral creep. Then you need to prepare for the connect or pull through. If you're a melee hero or very slow, sometimes you can't even get the first last hit due to timing. The pull through timing is a bit different every pull for reasons like how evenly did your creep wave damage the neutrals, or how many of your lane creeps were killed in the fight, and how early. With 4 creeps alive, your wave does expected damage, but if one of them dies during the fight, then your connect timing should be a little delayed. Usually I look at the principle that I want about 1.3 health bars of creeps remaining, or 2 neutral creeps left at the small camp, with one of them almost dead and another with full health. Or instead it could be 2 neutrals with about 60% health each. If I have only 2 melee creeps and 1 ranged remaining, I'll wait to pull a bit later, say when it's about 0.9 health bars or 1 creep with almost full health. When you connect the creeps, make sure you throw an attack at the new camp, especially if it's nighttime, as the creeps will be asleep and won't aggro by proximity alone. The neutrals should be right at your creep wave when the final hit on the small camp goes through, and then they will aggro to the new neutrals, completing the pull through. If you start your pull through too early, it's important to attack the small camp as soon as possible so that the timing works out. It helps in this case to have an AoE spell because you can get the last hits and connect the pull, effectively spending mana because of your timing mistake. A hero like Crystal Maiden is great for this because the extra AoE should guarantee the pull through and last hits. When the pull connects, the remaining lane creeps will almost always perish to the neutrals, but some of the neutrals are weaker on damage than others. The Wildkin camp isn't very high on damage, so it might be better for you to stick around and get last hits and denies. You could even fight with your creeps against the neutrals to attempt more gold and experience gain here, but maybe you're more needed in lane harassing enemies. Now if you're one of the teams in the offlane, the enemy's pulling is bad news because you'll lose gold and experience from this. The most surefire way to be safe from pulls is to block the small camp with a sentry or observer ward. This prevents the camp from spawning, so pulling is no issue. If they deward your ward, or you can't afford to block it, it's helpful to prevent pulling from starting. When the enemy support pulls aggro to pull the wave, you could afterwards attack the creeps to drag them in the wrong direction. Because pulling is so precise in timing, Pulling the creep wave the wrong way for 3 seconds will often mess up the timing, and the leashed creeps will return home no matter what. If they do successfully pull, it's important that you head within experience range to gain experience from dying lane creeps and dying neutrals. If you're there with an enemy, you split the neutrals experience, but gain full experience from dying lane creeps unless they get last hit by an enemy. In this situation, it's really important that you fight for these last hits. Using mana in these moments is almost always beneficial just to guarantee that you get more gold and more experience. If you arrive late and the small camp is almost dead already, your next move is to pull the pull-through camp in the wrong direction. This prevents the enemy hero from connecting at the right time, which results in a push which should eventually provide you experience and gold. If the enemy hero is already completing the connection when you arrive, you can stand in between the oncoming creep wave to draw aggro. Once the creeps are firmly aggroed to you, you can run to the river to drag the creeps back to your lane safely. The pulling hero will want to try to counter this by further attacking the neutrals to pull them towards the remainder creeps. Once the creep wave is within the neutral den, their fate is almost guaranteed to stay there, so for the off lane, they'd be back to damage control by trying to get as many last hits and denies as possible. If you want to pull the large camp by itself, that's also possible, but has some limitations. Because of the place the creep waves naturally run, the offlane wave runs a little closer to the large camp, meaning pulling the large camp there is a bit easier. Keep in mind that some neutrals are faster, so the satyr camp is a bit slower and will have trouble connecting than all of the other large creeps. The other thing that makes pulling this camp difficult is that it requires no enemy creeps nearby. If the waves are fighting in the same location you want to pull neutrals, those fighting waves will usually pull aggro from upcoming waves, making it difficult to aggro to the neutrals. It's easier to do this when the wave is pushing forward, since your incoming wave can aggro to the neutrals without getting distracted. If your core is smart, they can also do this while you complete your pull by tanking the wave for a moment to let your follow-up wave aggro to the jungle. A large camp doesn't always clear a full creep wave like this, but it creates a bit of chaos for the safe laners, which makes their golden experience collection harder. They also won't be able to contest your last hits because they'll be busy getting their last hits against the neutral creeps, so it's a great move to do this if the enemy has strong laning heroes or a laning advantage. That concludes my advanced pulling tips for the laning stage. Thanks for watching, guys, and up next is more Learn Dota.